Houston. Houston, we have a problem. DJ Apollo has landed. I repeat, DJ Apollo has landed.
Hear me?
You are listening to the Tales of Music and Film podcast. My name is Christian Taylor, and thank you for clicking on today's episode. And I just want to start by saying Happy Halloween to you fellow listeners. As I am recording this, we are 3 days out from it being Halloween night, and the Halloween spirit is in full swing. I live for this time of year. The fall weather has been absolutely beautiful. The trees are also gorgeous. I love all the different colored leaves. It's finally starting to cool down here in Illinois. The breeze, that fall crisp air, it's out and about, and I am loving every second of it. So, yeah, all that's going on. The weather is pristine, and I am just loving it. And I hope you guys are having a very excellent day. Hope everything's going well for you. I'm very excited for this episode. This one's going to be a little more laid back, if you will. I'm approaching it a little differently here. As I am recording this, it's Monday night. Usually I record these on the weekends, but I decided to wait and do it today because I had Walmart off, so I figured it'd be easier just to do it today. So here I am. And as many of you are aware, the Halloween Marathon is still going on. I've reviewed quite a few very good scary movies for this year's Halloween Marathon, and I'm very pleased with the movies that I picked out to talk about. And today I decided to talk about a movie I've had in the back of my mind for a while now, but I haven't had a chance to really go into it yet. But I'm very excited. So we are going to be returning to the Scream franchise. It's been a little bit since I've talked about them. I have already covered Scream 1 and then Screams 5 and 6 here on the podcast. If you want to check out those episodes, all three of them are very good. I recommend you check them out. I had a lot of fun covering those movies, but the one that I was wanting to talk about is Scream 4. Because I think this one has had a lot of things going for it. And I think this one really stands out from all six of them. I think that this one could potentially be the best Scream movie since the first one. Like, 2 and 3 were alright, but 4, I think, was really, really good. And I think it needs a little more love. I think this movie had a lot of cool stuff in it. Like, just to give a few, I think, first off, that I think this Scream movie in particular, I think it had the best, killer reveal, the plot twist on who the killers are. I think this film had the best, killer reveal out of all 6 of the current Scream movies. And I think this one was definitely the most violent. I think the killers in this movie were the most aggressive, violent killers out of everybody else in the movies, in my opinion, since Stu and Billy, of course. And I think this movie had, some of the highest stakes, I really enjoyed this one. So I'm very excited to go into it with some more detail here. So this is going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to it. I found a lot of good notes here. And we're going to be doing sort of a deep dive into this movie, talking about, the main plot a little bit, going into, what led to this movie being greenlit to be filmed, and then, its outcome when it was released. So this will be very interesting. So I watched Scream 4 for the very first time back in 2015, I believe it was, and I remember that was when my mom was very surprised, right, that I hadn't seen any of the Scream movies, so I'm pretty sure I watched all 4 of them in one day. Or we had Mom and I had a Scream marathon, and we went through and watched the 4 current ones at that time. And 4 really got me, I mean, at first, it took me a little bit to appreciate what it did. I really enjoyed it, but I remember having this feeling after finishing up 4 that I was very surprised that was where the story ended, because watching the end of Scream 4, it felt like the story was left unfinished, like there was more to tell, And reading these notes, it makes me understand why I felt that way. And we'll get to that as we progress through this episode. So what is the plot for Scream 4? So Scream 4 is a 2011 American slasher film directed by the late great Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson, who is actually directing the new Scream movie that's getting ready to start filming right now, Scream 7. So that's very exciting. So I figured, hey, better time as any to dive back into the Scream franchise for a second. So the movie was produced by Outer Banks Entertainment, and it was distributed by Dimension Films. And it is, of course, a sequel to Scream 3, which came out in 2000. And this is the fourth installment in the Scream franchise. And this one had the biggest time gap. So we had Scream 1 in 1996, then Scream 2 the following year in 97, and then we had Scream 3 in 2000, and then Scream 4 didn't come out until 2011. So there was a good, 10 years in between Screams 3 and 4. So the cast for this movie has, we have the returning actors, David Arquette, who is Dewey, Neve Campbell as our Scream Queen, Sidney Prescott, and then Courtney Cox as Gale Weathers. So we had our main trio back for this one. Then we had some new actors. We had Emma Roberts, Hayden Panettiere. We have Anthony Anderson, Alison Brie, Adam Brody, Rory Culkin, Marilee Jaffe, Eric Cutson, Mary McDonnell, Marilee Shelton, and Niku Tortorella. And if I butchered any of those names, I do apologize. I do struggle a lot sometimes with pronouncing names, but that is the main cast for this movie. Now, the film takes place on the 15th anniversary of the original Woodsboro murders from Scream 1996 and involves Sidney Prescott returning to the town of Woodsboro after 10 years, where Ghostface once again begins killing students from Woodsboro High like his predecessors. Scream 4 combines the violence of the slasher genre with elements of black comedy and whodunit mystery to satirize the cliches of film remakes. The film also provides commentary on the excessive usage of social media and the obsession with internet fame. Now, that was one thing I actually really enjoyed about this movie, how it really used social media as one of its main plot points. Because you find out, we'll get to the killer reveals later on in the notes, but one of the things I really loved was, now I don't think people really appreciated this at the time, but I think over a decade later after the film's release, people are now realizing, like, this movie was just one of those examples where it came out too early. It just took a long time for people to really appreciate it, but the reason, when you find out the reasons why the killers are doing what they're doing, is because they want attention and fame, and they know that, social media is the way to go. So they've been documenting all the killings that they've done and putting them on social media because they want attention, because they wanted internet fame. And I think at the time people thought that was really silly, but now we cut to modern times here in 2024, and that's aged really well. That was the motivation for the killers. They wanted to be celebrities. And I think that alone, again, the way the film introduces social media as a major plot point, I think it did an excellent job of doing that, moving into the new age. Now, the series was originally intended to be a trilogy, concluding with Scream 3. And I actually remember one time, I actually went on a Facebook Scream fan page. I made a post once asking fans, like, hey, now, do you guys think the story should have ended after 3? Or are you happy they made sequels after 3? And I think I think there were some fans that did say, some of them kind of wish that the story had ended with 3, because it did do a good job of wrapping everything up. I mean, there was really nothing else to really tell. I mean, Sydney finally, figured out her mom's past, and she found the guy that started the whole thing, so it was just kind of like there wasn't much to really tell. Now, for me personally, I'm actually very happy they made the sequels. I think Screams 4, 5, and 6 I think those are the best ones in the franchise since the first movie. 2 and 3 are in the okay territory, but I think 4, 5, and 6 were really good sequels in the franchise. And I think that really says a lot. When you're getting to the 4th, 5th, and 6th installment in a franchise and have them still be, like, very good, like, that's a victory. With a lot of franchises, by the time you get to the 4th installment, the magic kind of starts to fizzle out. But not in Scream's case, in my opinion. But as I was saying, so Scream was originally intended to be a trilogy. However, in June of 2008, the Weinstein Company announced a 4th film was in development, with Craven confirmed to direct in March of 2010. In September 2009, David Arquette, Neve Campbell, and Courtney Cox were announced to be returning, after which the casting process lasted between April and September of 2010. Principal photography began in June of 2010 and ended in September that same year, taking place in and around Ann Arbor, Michigan. Scenes set around Woodsboro High School were filmed at the Woodworth Middle School in Dearborn, Michigan. Aaron Kruger, who previously wrote the screenplay for Scream 3, was hired for script rewrites during production. Reshoots were filmed in early 2011 following test screenings. Now, I feel like that's going to be a little hint at some of the things we're going to be talking about here, because this movie fell victim to good scenes being cut from the movie that I think affected it a little bit. We'll get more into that, but the notes do go into more detail about this, where this movie has some deleted scenes that you can find on YouTube, where I was kind of like, man, some of these scenes should have been kept in. It would have made the movie so much better. Or there were alternate takes of scenes that I think were better than the ones that were used in the movie, and we'll get into that. So Scream 4 premiered at the TCL Chinese Theater in Los Angeles on April 11th, 2011, and was released in the United States on April 15th, 2011 by Dimension Films. The film received mixed reviews from critics at the time of its release, earning praise for its performances, direction, and humor, but criticism for the lack of scares and the reliance on cliched formulas. However, many considered it to be an improvement over its predecessor and has enjoyed several positive reprisals since, particularly for its persistent examination of the impact of social media, as we talked about earlier. It grossed $97 million worldwide on a budget of just $40 million, becoming the lowest grossing film in the Scream franchise. Scream 4 was, sadly, the final film to be directed by Wes Craven before he died in 2015. It was followed by the anthology television series Scream, which ran from 2015 to 2019, which was developed for MTV without the involvement of the main cast or crew of the films, although Jackson returned to voice Ghostface in the 3rd season. A 5th film that is a direct sequel, Scream, was released on January 14, 2022 by Paramount Pictures. And then there was Scream 6. So that is the main little synopsis of the movie and its impact when it was released. And I think it was kind of like, I think Scream 4 was kind of like The Thing, for example, where I think it just took a while for people to really appreciate what it was trying to do and what it was trying to say. But I think this movie was definitely better than Screams 2 and 3. That's my opinion. I think Scream 4 really did go back to the roots of the first movie, and I think it did so in flying colors. It was really good. I think Neve Campbell, David Arquette, and Courtney Cox gave some of their best performances in that movie. As for all the new characters that brought into this, I mean, there were a lot of great new character additions in this, like Deputy Hicks. I really enjoyed her character. She was in Screams 4 and 5, and I really liked her a lot. I really did. She was a nice character for the franchise. It just sucks they killed her off in 5. I was really hoping she could have been in the story a little longer, but oh well. So what is the plot? So what we're going to be doing next is a little deep dive plot summary of what happens over the course of the 2 hours of Scream 4. So, plot. The movie takes place on the 15th anniversary week of the original Woodsboro murders. High school students Jenny and Randall and Marion Cooper are murdered by Ghostface. Sidney Prescott returns to Woodsboro the following day to promote her self-help book with her publicist Rebecca Walters. After evidence is found in her rental car, Sidney becomes a prime suspect in the murders and must stay in town until they are solved. Sidney's teenage cousin, Jill Roberts, who is coping with the infidelity of her ex-boyfriend, Trevor Shelton, gets a threatening phone call from Ghostface, as does her friend Olivia Morris. Jill and Olivia, alongside their friend Kirby Reed, are questioned about their calls by Dewey Riley, now the town sheriff. While his deputies Judy Hicks, Anthony Perkins, and Ross Haas assist him in the case. Gail Weathers, who is now Dewey's wife, is struggling with her writer's block and decides to investigate the murders against her husband's wishes. That night, as Sidney stays over with Jill and her aunt, Kate, Olivia is brutally murdered by Ghostface as Jill and Kirby watch in horror from across the street. Sidney herself is then confronted by Ghostface, and they fight until Ghostface is forced to flee with Perkins and Haas when Perkins and Haas arrive. At the hospital, Sidney fires Rebecca after learning of her desire to exploit the murders to increase book sales. Rebecca is subsequently murdered by Ghostface at a parking garage. Gail enlists the help of two high school movie fanatics, Charlie Walker and Robbie Mercer. Charlie theorizes that the killer is following the rules of horror remakes. Gail and Sidney conclude that the killer will likely strike at the Stabathon, a screening party held in a barn where teenagers gather to binge watch all 7 movies of the Stab franchise, which is, of course, a tongue-in-cheek jab at the Scream movies. It's basically, a Scream movie within a Scream movie. It's pretty cool. Like, it was first introduced in Scream 2 with the first Stab movie, because Scream 2 opens up with this couple going to see Stab 1 theaters, recounting the events that happened in the first Scream movie. So Gail sneaks into the party to investigate, but Ghostface attacks her, stabbing her in the shoulder. Haas and Perkins, who were assigned to guard Jill's house, are also murdered. Sidney discovers through another taunting call from Ghostface that Jill has left for Kirby's, before Ghostface attacks her and Kate, killing the latter. Jill, Kirby, Charlie, and Robbie and Trevor arrive for an after-party at Kirby's house when Ghostface strikes, killing a drunken Robbie. Sidney arrives to leave with Jill, but they are both chased by Ghostface. As Sidney calls Dewey and tries to find Jill, Kirby frees Charlie, who is bound and gagged, but he immediately stabs her, revealing himself as Ghostface before leaving her to bleed out. Sidney is confronted by Charlie and a second Ghostface who reveals herself as Jill. She admits to masterminding the murders out of jealousy from the fame that Sidney received from surviving the previous killing sprees and desires to achieve clout as a pseudo-victim of the murders. Intending to frame Trevor as Ghostface, Jill kills Trevor and betrays Charlie, stabbing him to death to pin him as Trevor's accomplice so she can be the sole survivor. She then stabs Sidney, injures herself to frame Trevor even further. Dewey and the police arrive as Sidney and Jill are taken to the hospital. After discovering that Sydney has survived, an enraged Jill goes to her hospital room and makes a final attempt to kill her, but Sydney fights back. Dewey, Gail, and Judy intervene. After Dewey learns she is the killer because Jill somehow knew exactly where Gail was stabbed, Jill subdues Dewey and Judy and holds Gail at gunpoint, but Sydney incapacitates Jill with a defibrillator and ultimately kills her by shooting her in the heart. Dewey calls in all police units as reporters outside enormously name Jill as the sole surviving hero. And that's where the film ends. And it was a great twist, man. Guys, I'm telling you right now, Jill revealing herself as the killer, I think, was the biggest twist in the entire franchise. Out of all the Ghostface reveals, I stand by this when I say I think her reveal was the most shocking one. Like an actual blood relative of Sydney being the killer. I mean, that was pretty crazy, concept for back then. Like, I remember earlier this year, I showed all the Scream movies to a friend of mine. His name is KB. Now, this guy is a pro at figuring out, who's the killer in movies. And he did a good job finding out who the killers were in Screams 1, 2, and 3. But with Scream 4, he was flabbergasted when Jill revealed herself to be the killer. Like, he never would have guessed that. And I think that was enough evidence for me to realize that this movie did a really good job of hiding the killer's identities, really making you think, like, who is the killer? Like, this film did a great job of making you think, I think it's this person? No, maybe it's that person. Then when the reveal's done, you're like, oh my gosh, I never would have guessed it was Jill. It's just great job. Like, really great job. So, yeah, that was amazing. And I gotta give a shout out to the actress who played her. Like, the actress who played Jill, she was absolutely amazing in this. Like, she was absolutely insane. Like, I disliked her very much once she was revealed to be the killer. She was really giving off, spoiled brat vibes, and she just knocked it out of the ballpark with her performance. She really did a great job of just sounding absolutely nutter crazy. She did a good job embodying, like, okay, this girl is absolutely, like, off the rails, just insane, like, she was great. And another actress I want to give a shout out to is Hayden Panettiere as, Kirby. Like, she was another amazing character in this movie, and I was so happy that they brought her back as a main character for Scream 6. Hayden returning as Kirby in Scream 6 is one of the best things about that movie. It's a great movie, but man, Kirby coming back, like, that was a huge win for us fans. Like, Hayden's amazing. She is great. And if you guys want to see how great of an actress she really is, you guys should definitely go check out the Until Dawn video game. It just got a remake for the PS5, and she played one of the main characters in it, and she's great. And I thought it was really cool, for the longest time that people were theorizing whether or not if Kirby was dead. There was a nice little detail in Scream 5 that was hinting at Kirby's return, is that one of the characters in Scream 5 was watching a YouTube video. If you pause the shot of the close-up on his laptop, if you look to the right, there was a list of thumbnails of other videos on the right-hand side of the laptop screen. One of them was Kirby being interviewed about surviving the Woodsboro murders back in 2011. So Scream 5 confirmed that she was still alive, and they brought her back for 6. So I thought that was really great that they did that for the fans. So yeah, Kirby definitely got some justice, and she was a great addition for Scream 6. Now, I know that I mentioned earlier that there were scenes that were cut from this, or alternative takes, that I think should have been kept in. So we're going to go through those a little bit. So, scenes that were cut. So there's one scene I think that definitely should have been kept in, and that is Dewey and his police force going into the house where those two girls were killed at the beginning of Scream 4. and we see the aftermath and what Ghostface did. And guys, it's absolutely horrifying. Like, one girl like is hanging from a chandelier in the kitchen. I think the other girl had her guts like sliced open on the floor. Like it was absolutely insane. I also think that a message was left on one of the walls written in blood. Like it was a very violent, scene, and I think it does a good job of showing like even more that this is not like the ghost faces that Dewey, Sidney, and Gale have faced before. Like this one is next level violent crazy. And I think just seeing the aftermath of what they did to those poor girls really emphasized. And then seeing, Dewey and Judy's reactions to seeing just how violent the whole scene was. I think it did a great job of really just showing how absolutely insane these killers are. So I think that scene definitely should have been kept in. And what's really cool about that scene is that Wes Craven has a cameo in it. He plays one of the people, taking photographs of the crime scene. You see him for like a split second. And then there's an alternative. So there's an alternate opening. So going back to the opening scene where the girls are killed, there is an alternate version of that scene where I think it just really boils down to, it really gets to the point. So in the version that was used in the movie, it feels really dragged out. Where the girls they're watching like the current Stab movie, and they're like taking turns thinking, like one friend's like, oh, I don't think this movie works that well. Other friend's like, well, I think it's a great movie. Just doing this back and forth. And then one of the girls plays a trick on the other, acting like they've been kidnapped or something, or they're getting attacked. And it's a good version, but the alternate take that we're discussing right now, I think was better, where I just think this alternative take did a better job, it wasn't so much drawn out. Like, this one felt a lot more, it got to the point a lot quicker. And like the girl pretends to be playing dead on the living room floor. The friend comes back and they're like, "Oh, everything's fine." Then Ghostface comes in and kills them. And then we get that final shot of Ghostface hovering over the other girl, and then right as he stabs her is when the opening credits start. And I think that worked a lot better than the version the film went with. I think that alternative take should have been kept in. Now, another scene I think should have been kept in the movie was there's this small scene of Dewey and Gale getting ready in the morning. They're both in the bathroom. Dewey's getting dressed right quick, and then Gale's at the kitchen sink brushing her teeth, and they're talking about Sidney's dad, who apparently passed away during the time frame between Screams 3 and 4. So that deleted scene, kind of tells you, Sidney lost her dad, as well. So now she's like extremely alone. Like by the end of Scream 4, I'm pretty sure like Sidney's whole family is like dead now, and it's horrible. Like this poor woman cannot catch a break. She like all of her friends are murdered, along with her mom's dead. She killed her own brother, and then her cousin gets killed. She loses, one of her own family members, Jill, gets killed. I mean, like, by the end of Scream 4, I don't think she has any family or friends left, except for Gale and Dewey. Just, my gosh, man, poor girl. But that scene with Dewey and Gale talking about Sidney's dad, I think that should have been kept in, just to confirm, what happened to Sidney's dad, because he's never mentioned again, after Scream 3. He had, like, one scene in Scream 3, and then we just never see him again. And then there's another scene that I think definitely should have been kept in this movie, and it was a fountain scene with the brand new high school characters, all sitting around a fountain, just like Sidney and her friends did in the first movie, where with Kirby, Jill, and all them, sitting around talking about, like who they think might have done the murders. And that was a really good scene too. Very, nice little reference to the original one. That definitely should have been kept in the movie. I cannot believe they cut that, that should have been kept in. And there's also another scene that I think was very cool, just showing you like how much Dewey takes his job really seriously. There's this nice little scene where Dewey does a test of how quickly his officers react to a bad situation. So he messes with the cops that are guarding the house that Sydney and her family are staying in. He does this thing where he makes them think that Ghostface is getting ready to break down the door, and then he opens it, and he's happy with how quickly the squad got their reaction time. He timed them, like, you guys did that in, like, this amount of time. I think you could have did it a little quicker, you know? Like, he's trying to make sure that his officers are set and ready to go, just showing you that Dewey did, in fact, earn that sheriff position. He got it for a reason. And then there is another small little scene in here where Dewey is chatting with Deputy Hicks, and I cannot believe they cut this, where Dewey finally acknowledges the death of his sister from the first movie, you know, where Sydney's best friend who tries to crawl through the doggy door and she gets killed. Dewey finally talks about her in this deleted scene, talking about how it seems that the killers are trying to do a repeat of what happened 15 years ago during the events of the first movie. Because Dewey never mentions his sister's death in Screams 2 or 3. Like, she's just completely forgotten about, like she didn't even exist. So this scene of Dewey finally acknowledging her is just kind of like, why the heck would you cut that? That scene definitely should have been kept in the movie. And then there was this other scene featuring Gail where she's, you know, trying to figure out who the murderers are, and she's talking with some of the other news outlets and everything, she's like, you know, back in the game, like, you know, she's the Gail Weathers we all know and love from the first 3 films, you know. It was a nice little funny scene of her using her same tactics that she used in the previous movie. So we got to see, you know, classic Gail Weathers. And it was a good scene, should have been kept in my opinion. And then lastly, the ending, there's a deleted scene that extends the ending to Scream 4, where we see Sydney back in her hospital bed after Jill is killed and everything's over with. And Dewey and Gail come in to visit her a little bit, and they reminiscent a little bit, talking about how happy they're all still here and that everything's good now. You know, it was heartfelt in my opinion, and part of me thinks that maybe it should have been kept in. You know, it was a nice little. It was just nice seeing all 3 of them together again. You know, and. It did extend the ending a little bit, but I think it would have worked. But overall, that is the list of scenes that I think should have been kept in. But again, that is just my opinion. The movie's already good, but I think these additional scenes and alternative takes could have enhanced the movie even more. So those are just my thoughts on the cut scenes. So now we're going to be getting into the writing aspect of this. So what was the writing experience like? So Wes Craven stated that there had been no real-life Ghostface murders from between the decade time jump of Screams 3 to 4, but that there had been numerous sequels to the film within a film, which was Stab. He also commented on the status of Sidney Prescott, stating she's done her best to move on from the events that occurred in the previous films, even releasing a successful book. Craven said that endless sequels, the modern spew of remakes, film studios and directors are at the butts of parodies in the film. The main characters had to figure out where the horror genre is in current days to figure out how to modern events happening to and around them. William expressed his desire to tell a story in which the audience would care about the characters like Sidney Prescott, who survived the first 3 films, and focused on them rather than the next kill. In comparison to other horror films like those of the Saw franchise. In an early draft of the script, Gail and Dewey had a baby, but this was changed after it was decided that bringing a baby into the film would make shooting impossible. In another early form of the script, the opening scene had Sidney start fighting with Ghostface and be left for dead. There would have been a 2-year gap in the story while she recovered. However, Bob Winston feared it would slow the pace of the story, and bringing in young characters would work out best. And I have to agree with that. That was one of the things I really enjoyed about Screams 4 and 5 was that they both did excellent jobs at introducing a new, younger audience, or not audience, a new younger cast for us to be attached to. Because by the time Scream 4 rolled around, Gail, Sidney, and Dewey were starting to get up there in age. Like, in the timeline, they all would have been in their early mid-30s. So they were starting to lose, the youngness a little bit. So I think it was nice by this time they introduced a new cast. Especially in Scream 5. I loved the young cast they introduced in that one. Scream 4's, new high school cast, I thought they were all very good as well. So there were numerous other differences between the original script and the version that eventually reached the screen. For instance, the opening sequences were changed around, as can be seen in the alternative versions and deleted scenes on the DVD, which I had just gotten the detail about. Also, the Stabaton and the sequences involving Gale being attacked, there did not appear, and they weren't in the original script. Another major difference was the ending. The hospital final scenes were added on later in the writing process. The original script ended at the house, with Jill being loaded into the ambulance and speaking to Dewey, then agreeing to give the photographers one photo under the pretense that they would then leave her alone, though she wanted them to take her photograph. Just then a paramedic from inside the house shouts that they have a woman alive, not specified but assumed to be either Sidney or Kirby. The film would have ended on this cliffhanger, presumably setting Jill up as an antagonist anti-heroine in the next film. There were rumors that Sidney would then possibly be suffering from amnesia in the next film, unable to recall that Jill was the killer. There were also rumors that Williamson was upset that this ending was changed. That was an idea that should have been kept in. Like, 100%. I would understand Williamson 100% if he was upset that the ending was changed, like I surely am. Guys, I'm telling you right now, they should have kept that original ending. Can you imagine how cool that would have been if Scream 4 ended on a cliffhanger and Jill basically winning, and then we don't know whether or not if Sidney is still alive or if she died. We don't know. That would have been amazing. I wish that they had kept that original ending. That would have been amazing. Sidney, can you imagine in another universe, Scream 5 is where Sidney wakes up and she doesn't remember that Jill's the killer? That would have been a very interesting concept. Then it's what if Kirby survived and she doesn't know that Jill was the other killer? Jill's identity was hidden, pretty well. The only person who knew her identity was Sidney. She's the only one, and she doesn't remember. That would have been a very cool concept. I would have seen that. I would have loved to go into theaters, to see that. That would have been very, very cool, to see. So yeah, definitely, that ending should have been kept in. That would have been a perfect, cliffhanger to end on. That would have been great to see. So that was definitely, they should have kept that original idea. So ideas that should have been kept in. So yeah, Jill winning, Sidney losing her memory, and the sequels could have been Sidney slowly getting her memory back and exposing Jill. That would have been a very interesting concept. Then 5 could have been, Sidney getting her memory back, and then, Jill tries to gain all her fame and attention, and then, Sidney shows up and completely destroys it for Jill. That would have been a great alternative take for Scream 5. So, Scream 3 writer Aaron Kruger was brought in during production to do some rewrites. Craven said, "Look, there was a bumpy period when things shifted over from Kevin to Aaron. I signed up to do a script by Kevin, and unfortunately that didn't go all the way through the shooting. But it certainly is Kevin's script and concept and characters and themes." Additional rewrites were made by Paul Harris Boardman. It was reported that the actors were not given the 140-page script past page 75 to protect the identity of the Ghostface killer. Well, that's a pretty cool little concept to do. Like, I like that, where it's like not even the actors know like who the killer is, so it makes their performances way more believable from that, lack of information. That works pretty well. Kind of reminds me how, like, when they shot The Thing, the actors talked about how, like, John Carpenter never did tell them, like, which one of them was the thing for each scene. Like, they were never told. And I think that worked to the film's advantage, because, it shows that this creature is doing an excellent job of blending in with the other people. It's like, how do you tell who's a monster and who's human, I think the actors, even themselves not knowing if they were a thing or not, worked very well in conveying that message even more. So yeah, that's a very nice little thing to do. So the filming of this film. So this movie had a budget of only $40 million. So principal photography began in June of 2010. Filming was scheduled to end on September 6th after a 42-day shoot, but instead concluded on September 24th. Filming took place in and around Ann Arbor, Michigan. Scenes portraying the Woodsboro High School featured in the original Scream film were shot in Woodsworth Middle School in Dearborn, Michigan. The former 16th District Court in Livonia, Michigan was used as a police station. In April of 2010, while scouting for a bookstore to use in the film, Craven spotted a new bookstore that had not yet opened in downtown Northville, Michigan, named Next Chapter Bookstore Bistro. Craven instantly loved the building as well as the name and decided to use both in the film. He also hired the owner's chef to prepare the food and pastry for a scene in the film. The scenes were shot the first week of July after the test screening in January. Craven and Weinstein did not think the two scenes played well for the audience. Amy Teagarden and Alison Brie returned to Detroit in late January and early February 2011 for 4 days of additional shooting. The scenes involved Teagarden's character, who is stalked at her home, and Brie's character, who is attacked in a parking garage. The film also excessively used computer-generated imagery for the first time in the franchise. For example, the blade was added during post-production with CGI effects instead of using a collapsing knife. Anderson's death scene, in which he is stabbed in the forehead and walks a few feet while talking before finally falling to his death, was not in the script, but was inspired by a real-life medical emergency. Craven had seen a documentary about a person being stabbed through their head and walked into an emergency room. He thought it was extraordinary if somebody was stabbed in the head and still be alive for a while. Craven also did not tell the studio that he was taking this approach for the death scene, jokingly saying he hoped he would not be fired the next day. So it seems that Wes Craven was taking some inspiration from real-life stuff that he saw, so that's interesting. So, what was the release like? So, the film was released in North America on April 15th of 2011, and we continue with home media. So, Scream 4 was first released on DVD and Blu-ray in Mexico on August 5th, 2011. It was later released in the United Kingdom and Ireland on August 22nd of 2011. in Canada and the United States on October 4th, 2011, and in Australia and New Zealand on October 13th of 2011. In the US DVD and Blu-ray rental charts, Scream 4 entered at number 2 on its week of release. The film then spent 7 consecutive weeks among the top 20 on the chart. Scream 4 made its television debut on April 20th, 2012 on cable channel Showtime. In December of 2012, Showtime featured Scream 4 during a free weekend preview where the station was available in over 80 million homes in America. On April 19th of 2013, Scream 4 was added to Netflix's online streaming service. To promote the DVD and Blu-ray release, Universal Studios produced Terror Tram Scream for Your Life, an event featured in its annual Halloween Horror Nights throughout September and October of 2011. The film grossed $10.2 million in home sales. As for Scream 4's box office, the Scream 4 grossed $38.2 million in the United States and Canada, and $59 million in other territories for a total gross of $97.2 million amongst its budget of just $40 million. So yeah, as I was saying earlier, the reasons why they had sequels planned apparently, and the notes go into more detail about it. But overall, the main reason why we didn't get a 5th and 6th was just because Scream 4 basically underperformed. It made its money back and way more, but I don't think Scream 4 hit, I don't think it hit the numbers that Craven and the rest of the team were hoping for, unfortunately. Which led to us, having to wait another 10 years, for a Screams 5 and 6, to show up. But it was well worth the wait. So what was the critical response? So the film was released in 3,305 theaters on 4,400 screens and grossed over $1 million in its midnight previews. It made $8.7 million on Friday and $19.3 million in its opening weekend, finishing second at the box office. According to industry experts, the film's opening weekend was unfortunately disappointing, experiencing the third lowest opening of the Scream franchise. In its second weekend, it fell to 5th place, taking in $7.8 million over the 4-day Easter frame, then $2.2 million in its third weekend. In its first weekend worldwide, the film took $37.3 million from 30 territories behind only Rio, which took $53.9 million from 62 territories. The film topped the box office in the United Kingdom, taking over $2 million. Came in second in France, third in Mexico, and fourth in Australia. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of just 60% based on 190 reviews, with an average score of about 5.8 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, "The franchise is showing its age, but Scream 4 undoubtedly an improvement over its predecessor with just enough meta-humor and clever kills." On Metacritic, the film received a weighted average score of 52 out of 100 based on 32 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of a B- on an A+ to F scale. But hey, overall, a B-, I'll still take that. Like, that's a good score, is my opinion. Hey, A or B, I'll gladly take that. But I would have to disagree with that little statement saying that Scream 4 was showing the franchise's age, like it wasn't aging, good. I would have to disagree with that. I mean, if anything, I think Scream 4 was showing that, hey, this franchise can still be relevant in modern times. Like, it had no problem, implementing itself into modern times, and it did so perfectly. Like, using social media as one of the reasons for why the killers are doing what they're doing, I think was a very good writing choice. I don't think this movie was the example of, oh, this franchise is starting to show its age. Like, I don't think that was the point at all, especially with 5 and 6 as well. Like, 4, 5, and 6 were showing, like, hey, this franchise is still strong. Like, these newest ones were saying, like, hey, Scream, we can still make good movies in the modern time. Like, as long as the writing's good, hey, we're still here. So, Roger Ebert gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, criticizing the film for using cliched formula of the slasher genre, but complimenting Craven's direction and Williamson's dialogue. Empire gave the film 2 out of 5 stars, criticizing the film's old-fashioned formula and lack of a scare factor. The New York Daily News thought the film was dated and that relying on obvious cliches doesn't seem iconic anymore, just easy. The Toronto Sun gave the film a mixed review, writing that this installment is nowhere near the hip, centered edge blast of newness the original was in 1996. Suddenly, it's the horror thriller that, like, your parents are excited about. However, the review praised director Wes Craven. Colin Covert of the Minneapolis Star Tribune gave the film a perfect score of 4 out of 4 stars, praising the combination of scares, comedy, and twists. Well, it's nice that finally see someone give this film a very positive review. In the years since its release, many have credited Scream 4 with foreshadowing the effects of social media on today's youth and the extreme lengths that they go to achieve internet fame. See, I told you guys, this film was just ahead of its time. Cut a decade later, I mean, it's like, how many people have we seen now in today's modern world who have done the most horrible acts imaginable? And you know why they did it? Because they want internet fame, they want attention, and they'll do it by any means necessary. I mean, guys, I can make a list of the amount of stories that I've seen over the last decade of these horrible human beings committing these horrendous, horrible acts, like these horrible things. And they did it because they want attention and fame by any means. And it is horrible. Like, we're seeing people just like Jill in real life. Like, there's a lot of them now. And again, it's because of social media. So Scream 4 was just ahead of its time. It is way more relevant now than it was then. And that just shows you the film was just ahead of its time. It just took a while for people to really appreciate it more. So, did Scream 4 win any awards? Well, in June of 2011, Scream 4 was nominated for a Teen Choice Award for Best Horror Movie, but lost to Paranormal Activity 2. Now, that's really stupid. Like, I haven't personally seen any of the Paranormal Activity films. I don't know if I will. They look really... Now, those films look really dated, in my opinion. I might check them out. I'm not sure yet. I might. I'm just not sure. I'm on the fence on that franchise. But on March 2nd, 2012, Scream 4 won the award for Best Horror Movie, and Ghostface came in third place for Best Villain at the Virgin Media Movie Awards. So yeah, the movie did end up walking away with a couple of awards. So awards, that's interesting. That's good. So, were there plans to make sequels after Scream 4? So, apparently, prior to the release of Scream 4, Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson both stated that its success would lead to a fifth and sixth film. Williamson stated in January of 2010 that he was contracted to write a fifth film in addition to the fourth one. Following the underperformance of Scream 4 at the box office, as well as the death of Wes Craven in 2015, doubts were cast on the possibility of future films. In 2015, MTV began airing an anthology television series spin-off of the franchise. Although none of the cast or crew from the films were involved, although star Neve Campbell has expressed doubts over any more installments, David Arquette voiced his desire to have a fifth film to pay homage to Craven. In June of 2015, Bob Weinstein, when asked about the possibility of a film continuation after Scream 4, denied the possibility of a fifth installment or any further continuation of the film franchise, citing that the MTV series as the right place for the franchise. Well, I think he was wrong on that. I have not checked out the Scream anthology series. It was canceled after 3 seasons. It ran from 2016 to 2019. I don't know if I'll watch it. Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I am very happy that David Arquette got his wish and that we got a Scream 5 and we got to pay... we got to make a very good tribute to Wes Craven, and then we got Scream 6 as well that did a great job continuing the brand new story that 5 started. So I'm glad that everything worked out in the end, that we got brand new sequels and a Scream 7 on the way with Sydney leading again. Like, it's very exciting right now to be a Scream fan. And that is going to wrap up the notes on the covering of Scream 4. I think this movie was just overall way ahead of its time, and I think it's aged like fine wine. Like I said, I think Scream 4 is definitely more relevant now than it was then. This movie had a lot of good stuff going for it. And I think out of all 4 of the Scream films, if we're strictly talking about the first 4 films, which had Sydney as the lead, I think 4 was the best scene. I think 4 was the best one since the original, with Sydney at the helm. And that makes me a little nervous for 7, because when it was announced that Sydney Prescott was going to be the lead girl for Scream 7, I was just kind of like, well, I feel like we've already seen like what can be done with Sydney as the lead character when we have 4 Scream films with her as the lead to show for that, I think 4 had overall the best twists and acting that Neve Campbell has gave as Sydney Prescott. So it's like, how do you top, what we already did in 4, I think 4 really did set the bar on what can be achieved with a Sydney Prescott-led Scream movie. So it's like, how is 7 going to top that? That is the question. But 7 is sounding more and more promising every day. I am extremely annoyed that they're not going to continue the new story with the new characters that were introduced in Scream 5, the core 4. I was really enjoying their story a lot, and it seems that their story is going to be getting cut short, which sucks. But I'll never say no to a Scream movie, and it's sounding more and more promising. 7's not going the way that I wished it would, but to see Sydney Prescott, back on the big screen, hey, take my money, I'm in. I love the Scream movies. Scream is one of my favorite franchises of all time, and I absolutely love these movies. They are the best meta kind of films out there as far as I'm concerned, and I will always watch them on every Halloween. It's basically a tradition. And I will have to get around to covering Screams 2 and 3, just so that I can say that I've covered every Scream film that is currently out. I'll definitely get to that at some point, hopefully. But I feel extremely honored that I was finally given this amazing opportunity to talk about Scream 4. And if you guys haven't watched it yet, you should definitely check out these Scream 4 or the other Scream films if you haven't seen them at all. I think Scream is a fantastic franchise that consistently gets better with each passing sequel. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this recording, had a lot of fun, learned a lot of very cool stuff about the making of Scream 4. I really enjoy doing these movies reviews because it's really cool getting to learn about how movies were made. It's a very fascinating thing. I love filmmaking, so getting to read these notes and sharing this information with all you is a very fun thing to do. So I have no idea what movie I'm going to cover next. I got a few possible collabs coming up soon. My best friend Jonathan's coming over this coming weekend, and I am going to ask him if he would be interested in possibly covering our childhood TV show, which was Star Wars The Clone Wars. I've been wanting him to get back on the show for a while now. I think the Clone Wars would be a very great episode for us to talk about because we have so many great memories of growing up watching that show together when we were teenagers. So I think that would make for a very fun episode. I was also hoping to do one last horror movie review before Halloween wraps up for this year. I've been talking with my good friend Catelyn Davis. She said she'd be very interested in covering Coraline because the movie is 15 years old this year, and I think it's one of the greatest horror animated movies or stop motion movies ever made. I think it's really good. I think that would make for a very fun episode as well. I'm trying to see if we could potentially do that this coming weekend on Saturday, but if it doesn't work out, a Clone Wars review with Jonathan could be the backup. So either way, I have 2 collabs hopefully on the way. That is very exciting. It's been a while since I've gotten to interview someone on the show, so that's going to be very, very exciting. So there is a lot of cool stuff on the way that I can't wait to share with you. So you guys take care of yourselves. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I wish you the best in life. You keep living life to the fullest and keep taking opportunities and just continue being yourself and keep a positive mindset. You know, the world's getting very negative right now. We need to stay positive and just keep living our lives to the best. So you guys stay safe out there. Happy Halloween. And until next time, my name is Christian Taylor, and you are listening to the Tales of Music and Film.